Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and in this video we're breaking down No Time to Die. This is the fifth and final film in the Daniel Craig era, and it's easily got one of the most impactful endings from a James Bond film ever. I know the movie isn't out in the States yet, so if you want a quick review, I'll say that I absolutely loved the film, and after I was disappointed by Spectre, I was expecting this to be pretty middle of the road. However, it's an incredible conclusion to what Craig started, and it's really something that you want to go into without having anything ruined. From this point onwards, I have a license to spoil, and if you don't want a doctor know what happens in the movie, then I suggest you exit the video and die another day. From here on out, it's for your eyes only, and if you're from Russia with love the video, then please hit the thumbs up button. With that out of the way, Octopussy, now let's get into the video. Okay, so No Time to Die breaks the mold in several ways. Not only does it have Bond have a child in it, but he also dies in the final act. You Only Live Twice did seemingly kill him in the introduction, but it was revealed that it was all part of a mission which would allow him to fly under the radar of Spectre. Bond is killed for definite here, and not only is he shot several times, but he also dies by his own hand by calling in a Navy airstrike and allowing it to destroy the compound he's at. For years we've wondered if someone would ever be able to actually beat Bond, and I did appreciate that he was pretty much instrumental in his own demise and that it was his choice. Kinda killed me a bit how as soon as Bond found out he had a kid, that the guy took the next available opportunity to die, but moving on. Now, in order to talk about the ending in full detail, I feel like we have to go over the plot itself, but time codes will be linked below if you just want to skip to that part of the video. Now we open not with Bond, but rather Madeline's swan and see the most impactful moment of her childhood play out in full effect. Not only does she learn that her father Mr. White is an assassin, his past also comes back to destroy his family in the form of Lucifer Safin, who, yeah, no clues for guessing what the name Lucifer is based on. Safin murders her mother, and he makes one hell of an impact. Now we learn that both White and Spectre poisoned Safin's entire family, and that he was the only survivor. He's come back to enact revenge, but he takes pity on Madeline and saves her from drowning under ice. Instead of her mother, she was of course raised by her father Mr. White, who impacted her life negatively due to all of the things that being a Spectre assassin brought with it. This idea of children being raised by one parent whilst the other one dies massively plays into the ending of the movie thematically, as had Bond raised his daughter instead of Madeline, then a similar situation may have played out. Now this introduction to Safin also sets up his goals throughout the film, and we watch as he steals nanotechnology that can target someone because of their DNA. This allows him to murder not only specific people, but also their entire family, who will die upon coming into contact with the person infected. The world is not enough, and he plans to wipe out millions across the globe. It's really got its gold finger on the pulse, and though the film was made before the pandemic, there are some similarities to it due to the nanotech being akin to a virus. After the flashback, we cut to Matera, where Bond and Madeline are visiting so that the former can finally say goodbye to Vesper and move on with his life. When visiting her grave, it explodes, and Bond is ambushed by Spectre agents. Because Vesper was working for Quantum, who were an umbrella of Spectre, Bond says never say never again and just takes an instant distrust to Swan. This is further fueled by Blofeld calling her to implicate her, but it is revealed in the film that this was all part of his plan. Swan didn't actually know anything about this ambush, but she does say some things that make him distrust her even further. When they're being chased, Swan says she has something to tell him, but as we learn in the film, this is actually her just saying that she's pregnant. After surviving the attack, Bond drops her on a train to never see her again, and you can actually catch her touching her stomach in this scene, which is another clue that she's carrying his child. It's a Thunderballs to the wall opening that has a lot of callbacks to on Her Majesty's Secret Service, as does the ending. In that film, Bond actually got married, and his wife was gunned down at the end of the movie whilst they were on their honeymoon. Over her corpse he said, "We have all the time in the world," which comes back around for the final few scenes of this one. Bond also rides around in an Aston Martin DB5, which of course debuted in Goldfinger, and he also rides in his V8 from The Living Daylights later on in the movie. Now the film gets a big time jump, and we pick up 5 years later to find Bond living on his own in Jamaica. Felix Leiter and the CIA try and recruit him to bring in the scientist that developed the nanotechnology. However, he's dissuaded by the new 007, played by Lashana Lynch. The fact that she would be taking the 007 number was reported on 2 years ago, and as usual, the Get Woke Go Broke crowd completely lost their minds because there was a strong black female character in the movie. They're gonna absolutely lose their shit when they hear about View to a Kill, but honestly I thought the way that they handled it worked really well. The pair strike up somewhat of a rivalry before she hands her designation back to Bond towards the end of the film, and I am actually interested to see if she comes back in the future. Now from this point, Bond works with the CIA and travels to a Spectre party which is being held for Blofeld's birthday. It's at this point that he sees the nanotech virus in full effect, as initially it was programmed to kill him, but it's been altered by Safin to attack the group. They're wiped out, leaving just Blofeld left, who's currently holed up in Belmarsh prison. Bond manages to bring the scientist in, but we find out there's a mole in the CIA who takes him, destroys the boat they're on, and shoots Felix later, who ends up dying from his wounds. Honestly, I was kinda hoping the boat would sink and that he'd be eaten by sharks just to bring things full circle from License to Kill, but alas, he skyfalls into the ocean along with the boat. The drowning scene carries a lot of similarities to Vesper's death in Casino Royale, and it's at this point you know the movie isn't messing around. Bond ends up working with MI6 once more and demands to be taken in to see Blofeld, but we learn the only person he's agreed to see is Madeline Swan. She's still torn up by the spy who loved me, well her, and Safin threatens her and says that she must use a perfume laced with nanobots when visiting Blofeld. Both she and Bond go to see him, but she says live and let die and leaves before Blofeld is brought out. However, Bond touches her wrist as she exits and ends up getting the nanobots onto his skin. After Blofeld admits that he framed Madeline, Bond goes to beat the living daylights out of him, and upon touching his skin, the bots kill the villain and Spectre along with him. By the way, if these puns are getting too much, just stop the video. Now Bond tracks Madeline to her home, and here we meet his daughter, though Madeline denies that they're related. It's a pretty big reveal, and I actually like that they gave Bond a real reason to fight beyond just Queen and Country. As much as I love the Bond movies, the character didn't really get an arc until the Craig era, and it's nice that things develop in a brand new direction. Madeline and their child Matilda are captured by Safin, and the pair are taken to his island, which is where the final act takes place. We learn that Safin is planning not only to sell the nanobots, but he also wants to unleash them on the world in a targeted takedown. After saving Madeline and Matilda, Bond remains on the island in order to open the blast doors to the lab so that it can be destroyed. There's an incredible Atomic Blonde-esque stairway fight, and James ends up giving one of the henchmen a golden eye after he uses his watch to blow the mechanical one in his head. Come on, yeah, golden eye, that was a good one, yeah, you give him a golden eye. Now unfortunately, as Bond goes to leave, the blast doors are closed once more, and he returns to reopen them only to be attacked by Safin. Safin shoots Bond several times, and also smashes a special nanobot vial against his head, which is targeted to attack Madeline and their daughter's DNA. We learn that it's impossible to remove these nanobots because they're in one's bloodstream on a cellular level, and therefore if he ever touches Madeline or their daughter, the pair will die. Bond returns to open the silo and radios Madeline to tell her that he loves her. She confirms that Matilda is indeed their child, and he says that she made the most beautiful thing he's ever seen. Madeline says that she wishes they had more time, and Bond replies by saying they have all the time in the world, which is of course a call back to the previous line from On Her Majesty's Secret Service. It's a real gut punch, as Bond's life once more has led to him losing the opportunity to be with the people he loved, but that is the tragedy of the character. In saving the world, he had to sacrifice what he wanted the most, but he does take some quantum of solace in the fact that Madeline and their daughter are safe. Neither Spectre or Safin are coming for them anymore, and they can now enjoy life without constantly looking over their shoulders. Madeline says she has your eyes, and he says I know, as the missiles rain down and destroy the facility. Now I'm not gonna lie, I kinda wish he'd said, you have all and no time in the die, but never mind, probably shouldn't have left that in the video. Now in M's office, the MI6 team from the movies raise a glass to James, and we watch as Madeline drives Matilda to Matera in the Aston Martin V8. She tells her a story about a man named Bond, James Bond, and we cut to credits. Now the song that plays in the background is We Have All the Time in the World by Louis Armstrong, and not many people know that this is actually a Bond song itself. It's kind of transcended that, but it was used at the end of On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Whereas that ended in tragedy, this ended with somewhat of a bittersweet ending, as both Madeline and her daughter get to be together. It was thought that Madeline was going to be somewhat of a reboot of Bond's wife, who of course died, but this is somewhat a happier ending that subverts expectations. It's the perfect send-off to the character, and as much as I love Bond, I actually think that they should pump the brakes for a bit before recasting and starting again. Going forward, I do think that the title James Bond will be used more as a codename for the best agent at MI6, and just in the same way that other actors have taken on the role, other characters could now too. This would enable the creative team to cast further afield and bring in actors like Idris Elba without having to explain why his race has changed and so on. Though most Bond movies are perfectly self-contained, there was a through line in most of them, and references to his wife in Blofeld were seen at several points. Initially, Craig's era was going to just be an origin story, but it did mess up the continuity in Casino Royale by bringing across Judi Dench's M, even though GoldenEye was meant to be her debut. By Spectre, they just threw everything out the window and brought across Blofeld and completely changed their relationship and the first time they met. This means at this point, there's no real continuity to the James Bond movies, and yeah, they can pretty much just do what they want at this point. Now, I actually take the ending of the film to indicate some things about what could be going on if you are a nut for canon. The entire Craig era could somewhat be seen as Madeline telling the story of Matilda's father to her, and this is why the Craig movies often feel like somewhat of a greatest hits compilation. There's the classic moments like him getting the Aston Martin, meeting Blofeld, all of the callbacks in Skyfall, taking down Spectre, and then his death. There's no real canon that they have to stick to, and thus they can pretty much go in whatever direction they want to with a new actor and simply tell standalone stories once more or tie them into this. However, they have additional options beyond this, and should they want to remain in this continuity, they can continue with the new characters and potentially even Bond's daughter. I'm really interested to see whether people would like a reboot or not, so make sure you comment below and let me know. Now personally, I'd absolutely love to see Henry Cavill in the role, as the guy's British, he looks like James Bond, is the right age, and is also a big enough name where I think people would be interested in his take. For me, Brosnan was always who I thought of when I thought of James Bond, and Cavill is along the same lines of what I personally imagine the character to be like. Now they could do the old fake out and just continue things as they are, and have Bond fake his death. It's pretty clear he gets blown to the Moonraker and back, but it's not like the character hasn't pretended to be dead before in this franchise. We don't see a body, and it makes sense that he would lie low, as should he come into contact with his daughter or Madeline, then he'd kill them both instantly. The film also ends with the typical James Bond will return, so yeah, you can hold out hope if you want to. And that is a long shot, and I'm just exploring all the options here before you start, yeah. Put down that keyboard. I kinda would rather that this was a closing of the book, and who knows, that rumoured 1960s period piece might be more of a possibility now. If you've been paying any attention to the series, you'll probably be aware that there were plans to kill Bond off a while back, and Danny Boyle actually ended up leaving this film because there had been discussions about murdering him, and he said that that was ridiculous. Before going into this, I would have said the same thing, but I do respect the way that it was handled. As of now, the creative team have said they won't start the search for a new Bond until at least another year, and with a new Amazon acquisition, we know we're getting spin-off TV shows. I think they have a lot of interesting side characters here, including the new 007, as well as Ana de Armas' Paloma, who does get somewhat underused. As we all know, tomorrow never dies, and this is a franchise that has existed for decades, so I'm sure we'll see more of it. Diamonds are forever, and this series is a real one, so I'm hoping that whatever they do next, that it's as good as this movie. Now that kinda leads me into my review, and I feel like I won big at Casino Royale because this blew me away on every level, including the ending. This is by far Craig's best performance, and another thing that I thought made the film incredible was its cinematography and direction. Everything in the movie looks absolutely amazing, and couple that with the incredible action scenes, brilliant acting, and story that has actual consequences, and you have what is one of my favourite Bond films. For me, Spy Who Loved Me is still at the top, but I have a lot of nostalgia over that movie and just love the tongue-in-cheek performance of Roger Moore. Don't at me. Whilst Craig wasn't my favourite Bond, and though that still goes to Brosnan, I can't deny that in terms of films, he's probably had the best ones. Casino Royale, Skyfall, and now No Time to Die are all incredible pieces in my mind, and the ending of the movie is something that's still going through my head. My wife didn't enjoy it all that much and said she probably wouldn't watch it again, but little does she know she will be when the Blu-ray comes out, you sucker. Now because of that and some of the reviews, I know there's some that don't really see the film at the same level that I do, but I can't wait to watch it again, and I love the direction that they took it in. Now it isn't perfect, and I think that Safin could have been utilised more as a character. He doesn't really arrive until the third act, and even then he's rather understated. The pacing can be a bit hit and miss at points too, but if you're invested in the characters, then I think the 2 hour and 40 minute runtime will just fly by. Overall, I'm really excited to watch it again, and it was well worth the wait. No Time to Die for me gets a 9 out of 10. Now obviously I'd love to hear your thoughts on the video, so make sure you comment below and let me know. You get one shot like the man with the golden gun, and yes, that's every single James Bond movie title used in this review. The script is a good one. Now the like button is right there, and if you want something else to watch, then make sure you check out our breakdown of the post-credit scene of Venom Let There Be Carnage. It's linked on screen right now, and it opens up a lot of possibilities for the future of the MCU. If not, then thank you for watching. I've been Paul, you've been the best, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care, and remember, you have all the time in the world to die. Peace.